The space station Meridian Prime hung in the void like a metallic flower, its docking arms extending toward the approaching vessels. Captain Elena Vasquez pressed her face against the viewport of the transport shuttle, watching the massive structure grow larger. After 18 months of deep space exploration, she was finally returning to civilization, and the sight should have filled her with relief. Instead, her stomach churned with an inexplicable sense of dread. "First time seeing Meridian Prime?" asked her shuttle pilot, a grizzled Centauran named Crex whose blue-scaled hands moved expertly over the controls. "No, but it's been a while," Elena replied, noting how the station seemed different somehow. "Darker, more fortified. Has something happened while I was away?" Crex's amber eyes flickered with something that might have been fear. "You haven't heard about the discovery on Kepler 442b? Elena shook her head. Her exploration mission to the outer rim had maintained radio silence for security reasons. Whatever had happened in the inner systems was news to her. "They found something," Crex continued, his voice dropping to barely above a whisper. "Something ancient. Something that has the entire Galactic Council spooked." The shuttle shuddered slightly as they entered the station's docking bay. Elena gathered her few personal belongings, her mind racing with questions. As a xenoarchaeologist for the Terran Exploration Corps, she had made her career studying alien artifacts and ruins. The prospect of significant discovery should have excited her, but Crex's tone suggested this was anything but routine. The docking bay was nearly empty, unusual for a station that typically buzzed with activity. The few beings Elena could see moved quickly, purposefully avoiding eye contact. Even more strange, she noticed heavy security checkpoints that definitely hadn't been there during her last visit. Dr. Vasquez, a tall, pale human in a crisp military uniform, approached as she disembarked. "I'm Commander Sarah Chun, Meridian Prime Security. Director Harrison requests your immediate presence in the restricted sector." Elena had worked with Director Marcus Harrison before. He was typically calm, methodical, not given to dramatics. If he was summoning her immediately upon arrival to a restricted area, something significant had indeed happened. They walked through corridors that Elena remembered as bright and welcoming, now dimmed and patrolled by armed guards of various species. Humans, Altarians, Centaurans, and others she didn't recognize, all carrying weapons she'd never seen before on a civilian station. "Commander," Elena said as they entered a secure lift, "what exactly was found on Kepler 442b? Chen's jaw tightened. "It's better if the director explains. But, Dr. Vasquez, I need to prepare you. What we're about to show you has caused 3 separate evacuation attempts from the planet. 2 xenobiologists have suffered complete nervous breakdowns. The third hasn't spoken since encountering it." The lift descended deeper into the station than Elena knew was possible. When the doors opened, she found herself in a corridor she'd never seen before, lined with blast doors and energy barriers. The air hummed with power, and she could feel static electricity raising the hair on her arms. Director Harrison waited at the end of the corridor. At 55, he was still an imposing figure, but Elena was shocked by how much he seemed to have aged since their last meeting. His hair had gone completely gray, and deep lines creased his face. "Elena," he said, embracing her briefly, "thank God you're here. We need someone with your expertise and, frankly, your particular psychological profile." "My psychological profile?" "Your ability to remain calm under extreme stress. Your documented lack of traditional fear responses. We've tested dozens of specialists, and most can't even enter the same room with it." Harrison led her through another security checkpoint, past guards who watched them with expressions of barely concealed anxiety. Finally, they stopped before a massive reinforced door marked with warnings in 17 different languages. "Before we go in," Harrison said, "you need to understand what we're dealing with. 3 weeks ago, our archaeological survey team on Kepler 442b discovered ruins that predate any known civilization by at least 50,000 years. The site appeared to be some kind of military installation or fortress. He activated a holographic display showing aerial views of the excavation. Elena studied the images with professional interest, noting the strange angular architecture that seemed to follow no logical pattern. The team found evidence of a massive battle, Harrison continued. Energy weapon scorings, structural damage consistent with orbital bombardment, and hundreds of what appeared to be burial sites. But in the deepest chamber, they found something else. The hologram shifted to show the interior of a vast underground space. Elena leaned forward, squinting at what appeared to be some kind of containment system. A stasis chamber, she breathed. Correct. And it was still active after 50 millennia. Whatever technology was keeping it running was beyond anything we've encountered. The chamber contained a single entity. What kind of entity? Harrison's expression grew grim. The closest equivalent in human terms would be a war dog. But that description doesn't begin to capture what this thing actually is. He gestured toward the reinforced door. The survey team managed to extract both the creature and enough of the stasis technology to keep it contained, but barely. 3 team members were killed during the extraction, not by the creature attacking them, but by their own terror-induced cardiac arrests. Elena felt a chill run down her spine. She had encountered plenty of dangerous alien life forms during her career, but nothing that caused people to literally die of fright. "Why bring it here?" she asked. "Because the ruins suggest this creature was created specifically for warfare against an enemy that we now believe may still be out there. The inscriptions we've managed to translate speak of guardians of the threshold and the watchers in the dark. If there's even a possibility that this ancient enemy still exists, we need to understand what we're potentially facing." Elena nodded slowly. As a scientist, she understood the logic. As a human being, every instinct screamed at her to walk away. The creature has been sedated since its extraction, but the effects are wearing off. We estimate it will fully awaken within the next 6 to 8 hours. Once that happens, we'll need to decide whether to attempt communication or destroy it, Elena finished. Exactly. But we can't make that decision without understanding what we're dealing with. You're our best hope of establishing some kind of rapport with it. Elena took a deep breath. "Show me." The door slid open with a hydraulic hiss that sounded disturbingly like a death rattle. The chamber beyond was enormous, easily the size of a hangar bay, and every surface was covered in energy-dampening fields and restraint systems. But Elena barely noticed the technology. Her entire attention was focused on the creature at the center of the room. It was unlike anything she had ever seen or imagined. The alien war dog was roughly the size of a small elephant, but built like a predator. Its body was covered in what appeared to be both organic armor and metallic implants, creating a seamless fusion of biology and technology. 6 legs, each ending in claws that looked capable of tearing through steel, supported an elongated torso that pulsed with bioluminescent patterns. The head was the most disturbing part, combining aspects of various Earth predators into something that existed purely to kill. But it was the intelligence behind the closed eyes that made Elena's breath catch. Even unconscious, even restrained by enough technology to power a small city, there was something unmistakably aware about the creature. Something that suggested it was not merely an animal, but a thinking, reasoning being that had been specifically designed for warfare. "Jesus," Elena whispered. "That's been the general reaction," Harrison said grimly. "But, Elena, there's something else. Something we discovered only yesterday that changes everything." He activated another holographic display, this one showing a complex energy reading. The creature isn't just alive. It's broadcasting, some kind of quantum signal that we can't decode or block. We think it's been sending this signal continuously since we extracted it from the stasis chamber. Elena felt her blood turn to ice. Broadcasting to what? That's what we need to find out. Because if this creature was truly a guardian, as the inscriptions suggest, then its awakening might be alerting whatever it was originally created to guard against. As if summoned by their conversation, the creature's eyes suddenly snapped open. They were enormous, multifaceted like an insect's, but with an intelligence that was unmistakably predatory. The bioluminescent patterns on its body began to pulse faster, and a low rumble filled the chamber. Elena found herself taking an involuntary step backward. Every primitive instinct in her brain screamed danger, but she forced herself to remain calm. This was why Harrison had called her. This was what she had trained her entire career for. The creature's head turned slowly, those alien eyes scanning the room until they found Elena. For a moment that seemed to stretch into eternity, human and alien regarded each other across the vast gulf of space and time. Then the creature spoke, not with its voice, but directly into Elena's mind. The words were not in any human language, but somehow she understood them perfectly. "You're not the ones who made me." Elena's knees nearly buckled. The voice in her head was vast, ancient, and filled with a sadness that was almost overwhelming. But beneath the sadness was something else. Recognition. "But you are their children. Elena." Harrison's voice seemed to come from very far away. "Elena, what's happening?" She struggled to find her voice. It's communicating. Telepathically. It recognizes humans, or at least our connection to whoever created it." The creature's eyes never left hers. The bioluminescent patterns on its body had shifted to a different configuration, almost like a written language made of light. The dark ones stir. "I have called to my pack, but none answer. How long have I slept?" Elena tried to project her thoughts back to the creature. 50,000 years, maybe more. The response hit her like a physical blow. The creature's anguish was so intense that she cried out and staggered backward. But mixed with the anguish was something else. Determination. Too long. Far too long. The Dark Ones will have grown strong in my absence. Where are my makers? Elena hesitated, then decided on honesty. Gone. Dead for millennia. We don't know what happened to them. The silence that followed was deafening. The creature lowered its massive head, and for a moment Elena thought it might weep. Then it raised its eyes again, and she saw something that chilled her to the bone. Hope. Then you must take their place. The Dark Ones come, and you're not ready. You lack claws, lack armor, lack the will to do what must be done. But perhaps that can be changed. Elena. Harrison grabbed her arm. The restraint systems are failing. Whatever it's doing, it's overloading our technology. Elena looked around the chamber and realized he was right. Energy fields were flickering, and several of the restraint systems were showing critical failure warnings. But, strangely, she wasn't afraid. The creature could have broken free at any time, she realized. It was choosing to remain restrained. I will not harm you. The voice in her mind continued. You are packed now, but we must speak more. There is much you need to learn about what approaches. Suddenly, alarms began blaring throughout the chamber. Emergency lights bathed everything in red, and automated voices announced system failures in multiple languages. We need to evacuate, Harrison shouted over the noise. The containment is collapsing. But Elena stood her ground. Something told her that running would be the worst possible response. Instead, she stepped closer to the creature. What do you need from us? Trust and courage. The Dark Ones feed on fear, grow strong from it. That is why your people cannot approach me. I am a weapon designed to inspire terror in the enemy, but that same design affects all living beings. Elena understood now why the other scientists had suffered breakdowns. The creature wasn't just physically imposing, it was psychologically overwhelming. But somehow, for reasons she didn't understand, she was able to function in its presence. Why am I different? Because you have a gift. Rare among your species, but not unknown. The ability to stand before the terrors of the universe without breaking. My makers had this gift. It is why they could create beings like me. The alarms stopped abruptly. Elena looked around and saw that the restraint systems had stabilized, but at much lower power levels. Somehow, the creature had found a way to reduce its impact on the technology. Elena, Harrison called out cautiously. What's happening? She turned to face him, her mind reeling with implications. We're not just dealing with an ancient alien weapon. We're dealing with something that was specifically created to fight an enemy that may still be out there, and it thinks that enemy is returning. Harrison's face went pale. Are you saying we're looking at some kind of invasion scenario? Elena looked back at the creature, whose multifaceted eyes continued to watch her with that disturbing intelligence. Tell him, the voice urged. Tell him that the Dark Ones have already begun to move. Tell him that the disappearances in the Outer Rim sectors are not random. Tell him that time grows short. Elena felt a chill that had nothing to do with the temperature in the chamber. Marcus, we need to talk. All of us. Because I think humanity just inherited a war that's been going on for 50,000 years. The creature's bioluminescent patterns shifted again, forming what Elena somehow recognized as approval, or perhaps relief, as if it had been waiting all these millennia for someone to finally understand the truth. Yes, the voice whispered in her mind. Now you begin to see, but understanding is only the first step. If your species is to survive what comes next, you must learn to become more than what you are. You must learn to become worthy inheritors of my Maker's legacy. Elena looked around the chamber at the assembled scientists and security personnel, all of whom were watching her with expressions of confusion and fear. None of them could hear what she was hearing or see what she was beginning to understand. Humanity was about to face its greatest test, and their only chance of survival lay in learning to work with a creature that had been designed to be the ultimate weapon of war. The question was whether they would have enough time to learn before the enemy arrived. The emergency council session convened in the highest security chamber aboard Meridian Prime. Representatives from 12 different species sat around a circular table, their faces illuminated by the soft glow of holographic displays showing data from the creature's containment cell. Elena sat between Director Harrison and Admiral Morrison, the station's military commander, feeling the weight of dozens of alien eyes upon her. She had spent the last 6 hours in direct mental communication with the creature, learning truths that made her question everything humanity thought it knew about the galaxy. Now she had to somehow convince the Galactic Council that they were all in mortal danger. Dr. Vasquez, began Counselor Vex, a tall Altarian whose silver skin gleamed under the chamber lights. You claim this creature has been communicating with you telepathically. Can you provide any verification of these supposed conversations? Elena activated her personal datapad, displaying the detailed notes she had compiled. The creature calls itself Fenris, which seems to be both a personal designation and a classification. It has provided detailed information about the ancient civilization that created it, including technological specifications that our teams are already verifying. She gestured to the holographic display, which shifted to show technical schematics. These are energy weapon designs that Fenris transmitted directly to our computers through some kind of biointerface. Our engineers confirm that the mathematical principles are sound, but the technology is centuries ahead of anything we currently possess. Counselor Thresh, an insectoid Kepler with compound eyes and clicking mandibles, leaned forward. Even assuming this communication is real, why should we believe warnings about an enemy that allegedly disappeared 50,000 years ago? Elena felt Fenris's presence touch her mind gently, offering support and additional information. The creature had explained that its telepathic abilities were strongest with her, but it could extend its influence to include others if necessary. She had asked it to remain passive during the council session, wanting to avoid any accusations of mental manipulation. Because the enemy never disappeared, Elena said gravely. According to Fenris, they went into a form of hibernation, waiting for the galaxy's defenses to weaken. The disappearances in the Outer Rim sectors, the unexplained energy readings near Dead Star systems, the reports of ships vanishing without a trace. These aren't random events. They're probing attacks. Admiral Morrison, a gruff man with graying hair and cybernetic implants replacing his left arm, spoke up. Dr. Vasquez, I've reviewed the tactical data from the Outer Rim. While there have been unusual incidents, there's no pattern that suggests coordinated hostile action. Elena had expected this skepticism. She activated another display, this one showing a three-dimensional map of the galaxy with incident markers scattered across it. Look at it from a different perspective, she said, manipulating the display to show temporal progression. These incidents don't form a spatial pattern because they're not meant to. But look at the timing. The map shifted, showing the incidents in chronological order. A clear pattern emerged, spiraling inward from the galactic rim toward the more populated core systems. They're systematically testing our response times, our communication networks, our defensive capabilities, Elena continued. Each incident is designed to gather specific intelligence about our current technological level. Counselor Vex's expression remained skeptical. This could still be coincidence, or the result of natural phenomena we don't yet understand. Elena took a deep breath. She had hoped to avoid this, but it seemed demonstration was necessary. She sent a mental query to Fenris, who responded immediately with a feeling of agreement. Fenris would like to show you something, Elena announced. It requires establishing telepathic contact with all of you simultaneously. The process is safe, but it will be intense. Several council members shifted uncomfortably. Counselor Thresh clicked his mandibles in what Elena had learned was a sign of agitation. Absolutely not, Admiral Morrison said firmly. We're not allowing an unknown alien entity into our minds. Then, how do you propose we verify the threat? Elena asked. Fenris has offered to share its memories of the ancient war. Direct experience is the only way you'll truly understand what we're facing. Director Harrison had been quiet throughout the exchange, but now he leaned forward. Elena, is there any other way? Any physical evidence we can examine? Elena consulted with Fenris mentally, then nodded. There is, but it requires traveling to the site where Fenris was found. The ruins contain historical records that would support everything I'm telling you. But that would take weeks, and according to Fenris, we don't have that kind of time. Why not? Counselor Vex demanded. Because the probing phase is ending. Fenris estimates that the enemy has gathered enough information about our current state. The next phase will be direct assault. The chamber fell silent except for the low hum of life support systems. Elena could see the council members exchanging glances, weighing skepticism against the potential consequences of ignoring her warnings. Finally, Counselor Thresh broke the silence. If this creature's claims are true, what does it propose we do about this alleged threat? Elena had been dreading this question. The answer was complicated and would likely be even more controversial than her warnings about the enemy. Fenris was created as part of a larger system. She began carefully. It's not just a weapon. It's a command and control node for an entire military infrastructure. The civilization that built it developed biotechnology that could enhance the combat capabilities of their soldiers. What kind of enhancement? Admiral Morrison asked, though his tone suggested he already suspected the answer. Physical augmentation, enhanced reflexes, improved cognitive processing, resistance to fear, and psychological warfare, Elena listed. Essentially, they created super soldiers. The reaction was immediate and predictable. Several council members began speaking at once, their voices rising in alarm and outrage. You're suggesting we submit to alien experimentation, Counselor Vex said sharply. I'm suggesting we consider our options, Elena replied. Fenris has made it clear that humanity and the other current species lack the physical and mental capabilities to fight the enemy effectively. We need to level the playing field. And what guarantee do we have that this enhancement won't turn us into something like that creature? Counselor Thresh demanded. Elena felt Fenris's amusement at the question, though she doubted the creature intended any insult. Fenris was purpose-built from the beginning as a weapon. The enhancements it's offering would modify our existing biology, not replace it. We would remain fundamentally human, just more capable. Admiral Morrison leaned back in his chair, his cybernetic arm whirring softly. Doctor, I've seen what combat enhancement can do to soldiers. The psychological effects alone can be devastating. You're talking about changing the fundamental nature of our species. The enemy won't give us the luxury of remaining unchanged, Elena said firmly. According to Fenris, they specialize in psychological warfare. They feed on fear and despair, growing stronger as their opponents grow weaker. The ancient civilization learned this the hard way. She activated another display, showing what Fenris had shown her about the ancient enemy. The images were disturbing, shadow-like beings that seemed to exist partially outside normal space-time, creatures that could drive entire populations insane just by their presence. The Shadowborn, Elena said, using Fenris's term for them. They're not fully physical beings. They exist in a state between dimensions, which makes them nearly impossible to fight with conventional weapons. But they can be hurt by beings who have been properly prepared. Counselor Vex studied the images with obvious distaste. These could be fabrications designed to manipulate us into accepting this creature's proposals. Elena was about to respond when every alarm system in the chamber suddenly activated. Emergency lights bathed the room in red, and Admiral Morrison's comm unit began broadcasting urgent messages from a fleet command. "Sir, we're receiving distress calls from the Kepler 442 system," the voice reported. "Multiple vessels are reporting contact with unidentified hostiles." The description matches known species profile. Elena felt her blood turn to ice. Fenris's presence in her mind suddenly intensified, and she could sense the creature's grim satisfaction at being proven correct. "They come sooner than expected," Fenris's voice echoed in her thoughts. "The excavation site has drawn their attention. Your people are in immediate danger." "Admiral," Elena said urgently, "you need to evacuate any personnel still at the excavation site. Now." "How could you possibly know that?" Morrison demanded, but he was already activating his communication systems. "Because Fenris is monitoring the quantum broadcast signals. The Shadowborn are homing in on the location where it was held captive. Anyone still there will be killed or worse." The Admiral's expression hardened as he received more reports. "Dr. Vasquez, the fleet commander is requesting permission to dispatch a rescue mission. Based on your consultation with the creature, what can you tell us about the tactical situation?" Elena closed her eyes and opened her mind fully to Fenris. The creature's consciousness flowed through hers, sharing knowledge accumulated over millennia of warfare. "The Shadowborn will arrive in small groups first, testing defenses and gathering intelligence about our current capabilities," she said, relaying what Fenris was showing her. "They prefer to attack psychological targets first, medical facilities, research stations, anywhere they can cause maximum terror with minimal resistance." She paused as more information flowed from Fenris. "Our conventional weapons will have limited effectiveness. Energy weapons can hurt them, but only if properly calibrated. They're vulnerable to certain specific frequencies." "What frequencies?" Morrison demanded. Elena rattled off a series of technical specifications that Fenris provided. The Admiral immediately began transmitting the information to his fleet commanders. "There's something else," Elena added grimly. "The Shadowborn have the ability to corrupt biological systems. Anyone exposed to their influence for extended periods will begin to change. They become something like the Shadowborn themselves." The chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. Counselor Vex was the first to speak. "Are you saying this enemy can convert our own people against us?" "Yes, it's one of their primary tactics. They prefer to avoid direct confrontation, instead working to turn their enemies' strengths against them." Admiral Morrison received another urgent transmission, his face growing pale as he listened. "The rescue fleet is reporting visual contact with the hostiles. According to the fleet commander, they're unlike anything in our tactical databases. Request immediate guidance." Elena looked around the chamber at the assembled representatives. The skepticism that had filled the room just minutes earlier had been replaced by fear and uncertainty. "Counselor Vex," she said directly to the Altarian representative, "Fenris is offering to provide real-time tactical support for the rescue operation. Its knowledge of Shadowborn tactics could save the lives of everyone in that fleet." "In exchange for what?" Vex asked suspiciously. "Permission to enhance volunteer soldiers who are willing to undergo the procedure. Fenris needs a pack, beings it can work with directly. Without enhanced humans to serve as intermediaries, its ability to help us will be severely limited." The debate that followed was fierce but brief. The reality of ships under attack in the Kepler system made abstract concerns about alien enhancement seem suddenly less important. Finally, Admiral Morrison spoke for the group. Dr. Vasquez informed the creature that we're authorizing limited tactical support for the rescue mission. As for the enhancement proposal, that will require more discussion. Elena relayed the decision to Fenris, who responded with a mixture of approval and frustration. The creature understood the political necessities, but it also knew that half measures would not be sufficient against the Shadowborn. Tell them, Fenris projected, that the enemy they face now is only the advanced scouts. The true attack will begin when they have confirmed our weakness. We have perhaps days, not weeks, to prepare. Elena repeated the warning, but she could see that the council was already overwhelmed by the immediate crisis. The concept of an even larger threat coming later was simply too much to process. Admiral, she said, Fenris needs a direct communication link with your fleet commanders. It can provide tactical advice that could mean the difference between success and disaster for the rescue mission. Morrison hesitated for a moment, then nodded grimly. Set it up. And Dr. Vasquez, I want you personally overseeing that communication link. If this creature tries anything that seems suspicious, you cut the connection immediately. Elena agreed, though she knew that if Fenris wanted to cause harm, it could do so regardless of any precautions they might take. The creature's power was vast, and it was choosing to cooperate only because it needed their help to face the greater threat. As the council session broke up and the representatives hurried to their respective commands, Elena made her way back to the containment chamber. She had a feeling that the next few hours would determine not just the fate of the rescue mission, but the future of humanity itself. Behind her, the emergency broadcast from the Kepler system continued, painting a picture of a battle unlike anything the galaxy had seen in recorded history. The ancient war had begun again, and this time, humanity would have to choose between remaining what they were or becoming something more. The question was whether they would have the courage to make that choice before it was too late. The Tactical Command Center aboard Meridian Prime had been transformed into something resembling a war room from humanity's darkest conflicts. Holographic displays showed the battle unfolding in the Kepler system, where Admiral Morrison's rescue fleet was engaged in combat with entities that defied every principle of conventional warfare. Elena stood beside a specialized communication console that had been hastily constructed to interface with Fenris's biotechnological systems. The creature's massive form remained in the containment chamber below, but its consciousness was fully engaged in coordinating the battle through quantum-linked communication channels. Fleet Alpha reports that energy weapons are having minimal effect, Admiral Morrison announced from his command position. The hostiles seemed to phase in and out of normal space. Elena felt Fenris's frustration through their mental link. The creature had been providing tactical advice for the past 3 hours, but the human fleet commanders were struggling to implement strategies that went against everything they had learned about space combat. They fight as if the enemy follows their rules, Fenris projected to Elena. The Shadowborn do not exist entirely in your dimension. Your captains must learn to think in 4 dimensions, not 3. Admiral, Elena called out, Fenris says our fleet is trying to fight a 3-dimensional battle against a 4-dimensional enemy. The Shadowborn can step partially out of our reality to avoid attacks. Morrison turned from his displays, his face grim with concentration. What does it suggest? Elena consulted with Fenris, then began relaying a complex series of tactical modifications. Coordinate attacks across multiple time intervals. When a Shadowborn phases out to avoid one ship's weapons, it becomes vulnerable to attacks from vessels positioned in its probable emergence zones. That would require prediction algorithms we don't possess, Morrison protested. Fenris can provide them, but only if it has direct access to your fleet's navigation computers. Morrison hesitated. Granting an alien entity access to military systems was a massive security risk, but the reports from the battle zone were becoming increasingly desperate. Dr. Vasquez, came a voice from one of the communication stations. We're receiving an emergency transmission from Captain Rodriguez aboard the rescue ship Hermes. The main display shifted to show the haggard face of Captain Maria Rodriguez, Elena's former colleague from the Exploration Corps. Behind her, the bridge of the Hermes was in chaos, with sparks flying from damaged systems and crew members struggling to maintain control. "Elena, is that you?" Rodriguez called out. "Thank God. We've reached the excavation site, but it's a nightmare down here. The research team is trapped in the lower chambers, and these shadow things are everywhere." Elena felt her heart clench as she saw her friend's obvious terror. "Maria, what's the situation with the civilians?" 43 people barricaded in the deepest level of the dig site. The shadows can't seem to penetrate that far down, but our people are starting to change. Some of the security team have been exposed for too long. They're becoming something else. Fenris's presence intensified in Elena's mind, bringing with it images of what the Shadowborn could do to unprotected biological systems. The corruption was gradual but irreversible, turning victims into hybrid entities that serve the enemy. "The deep chambers have residual protection from my maker's technology," Fenris explained, "but it weakens with time. Your people have perhaps 6 hours before the shields fail completely." "Maria," Elena said urgently, "you need to evacuate those people now. The protective systems won't hold much longer. We're trying, but the shadows are blocking every approach route. We lost 2 shuttles just getting this close." Admiral Morrison stepped forward. "Captain Rodriguez, we're uploading new tactical parameters based on intelligence from our specialist. Implement the frequency modulations immediately." Elena watched as Rodriguez's crew followed the technical specifications Fenris provided. The results were immediate and dramatic. The ship's energy weapons, now properly calibrated, began tearing through the Shadowborn with devastating effectiveness. "My God," Rodriguez breathed, watching her tactical display. "It's working. The shadows are actually retreating." But Elena felt Fenris's concern through their link. The creature was analyzing the battle data and reaching disturbing conclusions. "This force is too small," Fenris projected. "They're testing your responses, learning how quickly you can adapt. The real assault will incorporate countermeasures for everything you have shown them." Before Elena could relay this warning, new alarms began sounding throughout the command center. The sensor operators were reporting massive energy signatures appearing throughout the Kepler system. "Admiral," called out Lieutenant Commander Parr from the sensor station, "we're detecting spatial distortions consistent with large-scale dimensional breaches. Whatever's coming through is much bigger than what we've been fighting." The main tactical display expanded to show the entire Kepler system, where dozens of new hostile signatures were materializing near every populated installation. Elena felt her blood turn to ice as she realized the scope of the threat. "It's a full invasion," she whispered. Fenris's mental voice carried grim satisfaction at being proven correct, but also deep concern. They accelerate their timeline. Something has convinced them to move to open warfare before completing their reconnaissance. "What could have caused that?" Elena asked mentally. "My presence. They know I have awakened and am providing assistance to your people. They must eliminate me before I can train more of your kind." Elena turned to Admiral Morrison. "Sir, we need to prepare for a massive assault. The Shadowborn are accelerating their invasion because they see Fenris as a threat to their plans." Morrison's expression hardened. "How massive are we talking about?" Elena felt Fenris reaching out through quantum space, gathering information about the emerging threat. The creature's analysis painted a horrifying picture. Based on Fenris's assessment, we're looking at a force capable of overwhelming every major installation in the system simultaneously. They're not just trying to control the Kepler system. They're making a statement. "What kind of statement?" Morrison demanded. "That resistance is futile. They want to break our will to fight before moving on to more populated systems." The reports from the fleet were becoming increasingly desperate. Ships that had been holding their own against individual Shadowborn were now facing coordinated attacks by entire squadrons of the entities. The tactical advantages provided by Fenris's guidance were being rapidly overwhelmed by sheer numbers. "Admiral," Elena said urgently. We need to implement the enhancement protocol. Now. Morrison shook his head. Dr. Vasquez, we haven't even completed the safety assessments. We can't just start experimenting on our own people. Then, we're going to lose this battle and every battle that follows, Elena replied firmly. Fenris has been trying to explain this to me for hours. Conventional humans can't fight the Shadowborn effectively. The psychological effects alone will paralyze most of our forces. She gestured to the tactical displays showing the deteriorating situation in space. Look at the combat effectiveness reports. Our crews are making increasingly irrational decisions as the battle progresses. The Shadowborn are literally feeding off their fear and despair. Elena felt Fenris's agreement, and something more. A sense of urgency that went beyond the immediate tactical situation. There's another factor Fenris projected. I can sense others of my kind stirring. The Shadowborn advance has triggered awakening protocols in Guardian facilities throughout this region of space. Others like you? Elena asked mentally. My pack siblings. Guardians who were placed in stasis at facilities scattered across the galaxy. They are beginning to wake, but they will be confused, disoriented. If the Shadowborn reach them first. Elena understood immediately. Ancient weapons, as powerful as Fenris, potentially falling into enemy hands or being destroyed before they could contribute to the defense. Admiral, she said aloud, there are other facilities like the one where we found Fenris. Other Guardians are awakening, and we need to reach them before the Shadowborn do. Morrison looked at her as if she had lost her mind. Doctor, we can barely handle the situation we have now. How are we supposed to mount rescue missions across the galaxy? By accepting Fenris's offer, Elena said firmly. The enhancement process doesn't just improve physical capabilities. It allows direct mental linking with Guardian creatures. Enhanced humans could serve as command nodes for multiple Guardians simultaneously. She felt Fenris's approval of her understanding, along with additional information about the ancient military structure. The original civilization had teams of enhanced warriors who worked directly with Guardians like Fenris. Each team could coordinate the actions of dozens of Guardian units, creating a military force capable of fighting the Shadowborn on equal terms. And what happens to the people who undergo this enhancement? Morrison asked. Elena consulted with Fenris, then took a deep breath. They become something more than human, but they remain fundamentally themselves. The changes are primarily neurological and physiological. Enhanced reflexes, improved cognitive processing, resistance to psychological warfare, and the ability to interface directly with Guardian technology. Are the changes reversible? Unknown. Fenris's memories don't include any instances of the process being reversed, but that may simply be because it was never necessary. The debate was interrupted by an urgent transmission from Captain Rodriguez. Her image appeared on the main screen, but Elena was shocked by how much her friend had changed in just the past hour. Rodriguez's face was drawn with exhaustion and something that looked like despair. Admiral, we've managed to extract the civilian personnel from the dig site, but we've lost 7 ships in the process. The Shadows are adapting to our new weapon frequencies. They're learning faster than we can develop countermeasures. Elena felt Fenris's grim assessment of the situation. The creature had been providing increasingly complex tactical guidance, but human crews were reaching the limits of their ability to implement such strategies. Maria, Elena called out, how are your people holding up psychologically? Rodriguez's expression darkened. Not well. We've had 3 attempted suicides and several cases of complete psychological breakdown. Whatever these things do to people, it's getting worse the longer we're exposed to them. Elena looked at Admiral Morrison. Sir, I'm volunteering for the enhancement protocol. Absolutely not, Morrison replied immediately. You're our only communication link with the creature. We can't risk losing that. You don't understand, Elena said urgently. Fenris needs enhanced humans to work with. Our current mental link is limited by my unmodified biology. With enhancement, I could coordinate with other Guardians, provide tactical support for multiple fleet actions simultaneously. She felt Fenris's strong agreement with her proposal, along with additional arguments she could present. The enhancement process would also allow me to serve as a training coordinator. I could teach other humans to work with Guardians, rapidly expanding our effective military capability. Morrison was clearly torn between military necessity and ethical concerns. Doctor, even if we approve this, the process would take time we don't have. Elena smiled grimly. According to Fenris, the basic enhancement can be completed in approximately 4 hours. The full optimization takes several days, but I would be functional long before then. The Admiral looked at the tactical displays, where the situation continued to deteriorate despite the Guardian's assistance. Finally, he made his decision. Dr. Vasquez, I'm authorizing the enhancement protocol on a volunteer basis, but I want full medical monitoring throughout the process, and we abort immediately if there are any signs of adverse effects. Elena felt relief wash through her, accompanied by Fenris's satisfaction at the decision. But the creature also projected a sense of urgency that made her stomach clench. We must hurry, Fenris urged. The Shadowborn have identified you as a primary threat. They will attempt to prevent the enhancement by targeting this station. Admiral, Elena said quickly, Fenris warns that the enemy will try to attack Meridian Prime directly. They want to prevent the enhancement process from being completed. Morrison's face went pale. How long do we have? Elena consulted with Fenris, who reached out through quantum space to assess the approaching threat. Perhaps 2 hours before the first assault wave arrives. Enough time to complete your enhancement, but not to prepare adequate defenses for the station. Elena felt a chill of fear, but also a strange sense of excitement. She was about to become something more than human, to join a war that had been raging for 50,000 years. The question was whether she would survive the transformation long enough to make a difference. Let's begin, she said firmly. And, Admiral, I suggest you start evacuating non-essential personnel immediately. This station is about to become a battlefield. The enhancement chamber had been hastily constructed in a section of the medical bay that could accommodate Fenris's massive biotechnological interface systems. Elena lay on a specialized table that more closely resembled an altar than medical equipment, surrounded by organic-looking machinery that pulsed with the same bioluminescent patterns she had observed on the Guardian's body. Dr. Sarah Kim, Meridian Prime's chief medical officer, monitored dozens of biosensors while voicing increasingly serious concerns about the procedure. Elena, your neural activity is off the charts, Dr. Kim announced. Whatever this process is doing to your brain chemistry, it's beyond anything I've ever seen. Elena barely heard the warning. Her consciousness was expanding in ways she could never have imagined, connecting to systems and networks that spanned multiple dimensions of reality. Through Fenris's guidance, she was learning to perceive the universe as the ancient Guardians had. Do not resist, Fenris projected gently. Allow your mind to grow into its new capabilities. The pain will pass. The pain was indeed intense, but Elena found that her enhanced nervous system was already adapting to process it more efficiently. What had started as agony was becoming something more like the discomfort of rapid growth. Dr. Kim, Elena managed to say, though her voice sounded strange to her own ears, the neural changes are intentional. I can feel my brain developing new structures. Through the medical bay's viewports, Elena could see the approach of the Shadowborn fleet. Her enhanced vision could detect their dimensional signatures even at extreme range, painting a terrifying picture of the forces arrayed against Meridian Prime. They come in greater numbers than I anticipated, Fenris observed. The enemy has committed significant resources to stopping your transformation. How many? Elena asked mentally. Sufficient to reduce this station to debris, unless we can mount an effective defense. Elena felt a surge of determination that seemed to come from sources beyond her original personality. The enhancement was awakening instincts and capabilities that had been dormant in human DNA for millennia. Admiral Morrison, she called out, her voice now carrying a strange harmonic quality that seemed to resonate through the station's superstructure. I need access to the station's defensive systems. Morrison, who had been monitoring the approach of the hostile fleet from the medical bay's auxiliary command station, looked at her with concern. Dr. Vasquez, you're not qualified to operate military systems. Elena sat up on the enhancement table, surprising everyone with the fluid grace of her movement. The biotechnological interfaces remained connected to her nervous system through neural links that had grown from her spine during the transformation. I am now, she said simply. Fenris has downloaded 50,000 years of tactical knowledge directly into my consciousness. I understand warfare in ways that no unenhanced human could comprehend. Dr. Kim stepped forward with a medical scanner. Elena, your vital signs are stabilizing at levels I've never recorded in any human being. Your reaction time has improved by a factor of 10, and your cognitive processing speed is approaching theoretical maximums for human brain tissue. Elena nodded, unsurprised by the results. She could feel the changes throughout her body, as if every cell had been optimized for maximum efficiency. The physical enhancements are only the beginning, Elena explained, standing and walking to the command station with predatory grace. The real change is neurological. I can now interface directly with Guardian technology and coordinate multiple strategic elements simultaneously. She gestured to the displays showing the approaching Shadowborn fleet. I can see their attack patterns, understand their tactical doctrine, predict their targeting priorities. More importantly, I can feel other Guardians awakening throughout this region of space. Admiral Morrison studied her with obvious unease. Doctor, are you still you? Elena considered the question carefully. She was definitely still Elena Vasquez, but she was also something more. The enhancement had awakened aspects of human potential that had been suppressed for evolutionary reasons. I'm still me, Admiral, but I'm also connected to something larger. I can sense Fenris's consciousness as clearly as my own, and through that connection, I'm becoming aware of other Guardians across the galaxy. She activated the tactical display and began manipulating it with enhanced precision and speed. The interface responded to her touch with unprecedented responsiveness, as if the station's computers had been designed for her specific neural patterns. There, she said, pointing to a section of space near the galactic rim. Guardian designation Heimdall is awakening at coordinates 45.7 by 183.2. And here, she indicated another location, Vidar is already fully conscious and engaging Shadowborn forces in the Antares sector. Morrison stared at the display in amazement. How could you possibly know that? Guardian Quantum Communication Network, Elena explained. All Guardians are linked through quantum entanglement. With the proper enhancement, humans can tap into that network. Elena felt Fenris's approval of her growing understanding, along with additional information about the Guardian Network's capabilities. Admiral, I need you to authorize the enhancement of additional volunteers immediately. One enhanced human can coordinate with multiple Guardians, but the network effect increases exponentially with each new node. How many volunteers are we talking about? Morrison asked. Elena consulted with Fenris while simultaneously analyzing the tactical situation and monitoring the awakening Guardians. Her enhanced mind could process all of these data streams simultaneously without strain. To mount an effective defense against the approaching Shadowborn fleet, we'll need at least 12 enhanced humans. To coordinate galaxy-wide resistance efforts, we'll need hundreds. Dr. Kim stepped forward with obvious concern. Elena, we haven't even completed the safety analysis of your enhancement. We can't start mass-producing enhanced humans without understanding the long-term effects. Elena felt a moment of sympathy for the medical officer's position, but the tactical realities were undeniable. Dr. Kim, the long-term effects are irrelevant if we don't survive the next 6 hours. She turned back to Admiral Morrison. Sir, the Shadowborn fleet will arrive within 90 minutes. Our conventional defenses won't even slow them down. But with a team of enhanced humans coordinating Guardian support, we can turn this into a victory that echoes across the galaxy. Morrison looked at the tactical projections, weighing military necessity against the ethical implications of mass human enhancement. Finally, He made his decision. Dr. Vasquez, I'm authorizing the enhancement of 12 volunteers, but I want you personally overseeing each procedure to ensure their safety. Elena nodded, already mentally composing the selection criteria for potential candidates. The enhancement process required specific psychological and physiological traits that were relatively rare in the general population. I'll need candidates with high stress tolerance, exceptional spatial reasoning abilities, and minimal susceptibility to psychological warfare. Ideally, individuals who have already demonstrated the ability to function in high-threat environments. She paused as Fenris provided additional guidance. Also, the process works best with individuals who have previous experience with non-human psychology. The Guardian consciousness is vast and alien. Candidates need to be able to accept mental contact without losing their sense of self. Admiral Morrison activated his communication system. All department heads, report to Medical Bay Alpha immediately. We're implementing an emergency volunteer enhancement protocol. While they waited for the volunteers to arrive, Elena continued her analysis of the approaching threat. Her enhanced senses could perceive details about the Shadowborn fleet that no conventional sensor system could detect. Admiral, I'm seeing something unusual about this attack force, she announced. The Shadowborn aren't just sending military units. They're bringing corruption vectors. What does that mean? Morrison asked. Elena felt a chill despite her enhanced resilience. Devices designed to convert entire populations to their cause. If those reach heavily populated systems, they could turn our own people into weapons against us. She manipulated the tactical display to show the projected trajectory of the Shadowborn fleet. They're not planning to stop with Meridian Prime. This station is just the first target in a campaign designed to corrupt the entire galactic core. Fenris's mental voice carried grim confirmation of her assessment. The enemy has learned much during their reconnaissance phase. They understand that your species values individual life. They will use that against you. How? Elena asked mentally. By forcing you to choose between saving specific populations and maintaining strategic advantages. They will corrupt civilians and use them as shields for military operations. Elena felt her enhanced emotions processing this information with clinical detachment, while her original personality recoiled in horror. The enhancement was allowing her to think tactically about situations that would have paralyzed her unmodified mind. Admiral, she said aloud, we need to warn the core systems about the corruption vectors. Standard evacuation protocols won't be sufficient. Morrison nodded grimly. I'll send out general warnings, but without proof, most systems won't believe the threat is real. Then, we make the proof unavoidable, Elena said with determination. We win the battle here decisively and document everything. The galaxy needs to see that the Shadowborn can be defeated. The first volunteers began arriving in the medical bay, and Elena was pleased to see that several were individuals she had worked with during her exploration career. Their familiarity with alien environments and xenobiological systems would make the enhancement process smoother. Captain Rodriguez was among the volunteers, her face still showing the psychological strain of her recent battle with the Shadowborn. Elena, what you've become, is it safe? Elena looked at her friend with enhanced perception that could detect the subtle signs of Shadowborn psychological influence. Rodriguez had been exposed longer than she had initially revealed, and the corruption was beginning to take hold. Maria, you've been exposed to more Shadowborn influence than you reported. The enhancement process might be the only way to save you from complete corruption. Rodriguez looked confused. What are you talking about? I feel fine. Elena felt Fenris's guidance as she activated her enhanced empathic abilities. The corruption was subtle but progressive, designed to turn its victims into willing servants of the Shadowborn cause. Dr. Kim, Elena called out, I need a full psychological evaluation of Captain Rodriguez. Look for signs of altered decision-making patterns and emotional processing. The medical examination confirmed Elena's assessment. Rodriguez was in the early stages of Shadowborn corruption, though the process was still reversible. Maria, Elena said gently. The enhancement process will burn out the corruption, but only if we begin immediately. As the enhancement procedures began for the volunteer candidates, Elena felt her connection to the Guardian network growing stronger. She could sense Fenris's approval and something more, anticipation. You begin to understand, Fenris projected. This is how the ancient civilization fought the Shadowborn. Not as individuals, but as a collective consciousness capable of matching the enemy's dimensional capabilities. Elena nodded as she felt the first of the new, enhanced humans coming online. Lieutenant Sarah Park, the sensor operator, emerged from the enhancement process with the same predatory grace Elena had developed. I can see them, Park announced, her voice carrying the same harmonic qualities as Elena's. The Shadowborn fleet, the dimensional distortions, the quantum signatures of other Guardians. It's like having a completely new form of vision. One by one, the enhanced humans joined the network. With each new addition, Elena felt the collective capability expanding exponentially. They weren't just 12 individuals anymore. They were nodes in a consciousness that spanned multiple dimensions and could process information on a scale that rivaled the Shadowborn themselves. Admiral, Elena announced as the last enhancement was completed, we're ready. The Shadowborn are about to discover that humanity is no longer the easy target they anticipated. Through the network, Elena could feel the approach of the enemy fleet with perfect clarity. But she could also sense something the Shadowborn didn't know about. Other Guardian facilities responding to the quantum beacon signals, ancient weapon systems coming online for the first time in 50,000 years. The battle for Meridian Prime was about to begin, but it would be fought with weapons and tactics that the Shadowborn had never encountered from a human enemy. For the first time since the ancient war began, the defenders would have advantages the enemy didn't expect. Elena smiled grimly as she felt the collective consciousness of the enhanced human team focusing on the approaching threat. The Shadowborn were about to learn that humanity, when properly motivated and enhanced, could be just as terrifying as any ancient weapon. The Shadowborn fleet materialized at the edge of Meridian Prime's sensor range like a nightmare given form. Through the enhanced human network, Elena could perceive them not just as physical entities, but as wounds in reality itself, dimensional intrusions that violated the basic principles of existence. The enhanced team had taken positions throughout the station's command infrastructure, their consciousness linked through quantum channels that allowed instantaneous coordination. Elena remained in the primary command center with Admiral Morrison, while her enhanced colleagues managed defensive systems, sensor arrays, and communication networks. My God, Morrison whispered, staring at the tactical display. There must be hundreds of them. Elena's enhanced perception counted exactly 347 distinct Shadowborn entities, ranging from small scouts to massive dreadnought-class beings that existed partially outside normal space-time. But she also sensed something else, Guardian responses across the galaxy as the ancient network awakened to full combat readiness. Now we show them what they have forgotten, Fenris projected through the network. Your species carries the genetic legacy of my makers. Enhanced and trained, you can fight as they once did. All stations report ready, announced Lieutenant Park from the sensor array. Her voice carried the harmonic qualities of enhancement, but Elena could detect the underlying excitement. Park was experiencing the Guardian network for the first time, feeling her consciousness expand beyond individual limitations. Elena activated the station's defensive systems with her enhanced neural interface, feeling the weapons respond to her thoughts as if they were extensions of her own body. The ancient Guardian technology had been integrated into Meridian Prime's infrastructure during the past few hours, creating a hybrid defense system that combined human engineering with Guardian biotechnology. Admiral, Elena said, her enhanced voice carrying throughout the command center. I recommend you evacuate all unenhanced personnel to the Central Core. The psychological effects of this battle will be overwhelming for unmodified humans. Morrison nodded grimly. He had insisted on remaining at his post despite the risks, but he had agreed to let the enhanced humans coordinate the actual combat operations. The first wave of Shadowborn scouts reached the station's outer defensive perimeter and immediately encountered something they hadn't expected. The energy barriers weren't just technological constructs. They were living systems that adapted and responded to dimensional intrusions with Guardian-enhanced artificial intelligence. They probe our defenses and find them strange, Fenris observed. They have never encountered this synthesis of human technology and Guardian biology. Elena felt a savage satisfaction as she watched the Shadowborn scouts recoil from the adaptive barriers. The enemy had spent millennia fighting purely technological civilizations. They weren't prepared for defenses that could think, adapt, and evolve in real time. "First blood to us," announced Captain Rodriguez from the Tactical Coordination Center. Her enhancement had burned away the Shadowborn corruption completely, leaving her with enhanced reflexes and the ability to process multiple combat scenarios simultaneously. Their scouts are retreating to reassess our capabilities. But Elena knew the respite would be brief. Through the Guardian network, she could sense the enemy adapting to their unexpected defenses with frightening speed. "They're bringing up heavier units," she announced. "Dimensional breach generators designed to bypass our barriers entirely." The main Shadowborn assault began with a coordinated strike against the station's reality anchors, devices that kept the local space-time stable and prevented dimensional intrusions. If the enemy could destabilize the area around Meridian Prime, they could manifest directly inside the station's hull. Elena's enhanced mind processed the attack patterns and formulated countermeasures with superhuman speed. "Sarah, reinforce grid sections 7 through 12. Maria, redirect power flow to the quantum stabilizers. Everyone else, prepare for dimensional combat protocols." The enhanced human team responded with perfect coordination, their individual capabilities amplified by the network effect. Systems that would have required dozens of technicians to operate were now controlled by single enhanced humans whose consciousness could interface directly with Guardian biotechnology. The Shadowborn dreadnoughts opened fire with weapons that existed partially outside normal space. Energy beams that could phase through conventional shields and armor. But Elena's team was ready for them. "Activating phase shift countermeasures," announced Ensign Martinez from the weapons control station. His enhanced reflexes allowed him to target enemies that flickered in and out of dimensional phase with precision that no conventional targeting system could match. The Guardian enhanced weapons systems opened fire, sending streams of energy that could follow the Shadowborn through their dimensional shifts. For the first time in the battle, enemy units began taking significant damage. "Excellent," Fenris projected approval through the network. "You learn quickly. But now comes the true test. They will attempt psychological warfare." Elena felt the change immediately. The Shadowborn began broadcasting what she recognized as terror frequencies, psychic emanations designed to trigger primal fear responses in biological beings. The effect on unenhanced humans would have been devastating, but the enhanced team processed the attack with clinical detachment. "Psychological assault incoming," Elena announced. "All unenhanced personnel, activate emergency neural dampeners immediately." Admiral Morrison, wearing a hastily constructed protection device, watched in amazement as the enhanced humans continued their coordinated defense despite being under direct psychic attack. "How are you functioning under those conditions?" he asked. Elena smiled grimly. "The enhancement doesn't just improve our physical capabilities. It allows us to process fear, terror, and despair as information rather than emotion. We can acknowledge the Shadowborn psychological attacks without being paralyzed by them." The battle shifted to a new phase as both sides settled into more sophisticated tactics. The Shadowborn began attempting to corrupt the station's technology directly, sending viral programs through dimensional channels that could rewrite the basic operating systems of any connected device. But they hadn't anticipated Guardian biotechnology, which existed outside conventional technological parameters. The living systems could recognize and counter corruption attempts with evolved immune responses. "They're trying to hack our computers," reported Lieutenant Park. "But the Guardian biotech is treating their programs like infections. Our defenses are actually getting stronger as they adapt to each attack." Elena felt Fenris's amusement at the enemy's confusion. The Shadowborn had spent 50,000 years perfecting techniques for fighting purely technological civilizations. They were encountering biological/technological hybrids for the first time since the Ancient War. "Now we press our advantage," Fenris suggested. "While they struggle to understand our defenses, we strike at their command structure." Elena's enhanced perception could identify the command vessels within the Shadowborn fleet, larger entities that coordinated the activities of the smaller units. Destroying them would cripple the enemy's ability to maintain coordinated attacks. "Targeting enemy command nodes," Elena announced. "All weapons systems, prepare for concentrated fire on my mark." The enhanced human team focused their collective consciousness on the targeting solution, processing thousands of variables to ensure maximum effectiveness. The Guardian enhanced weapons systems charged to full power, drawing energy from sources that conventional technology couldn't access. Fire. The coordinated strike lanced out across space, guided by targeting algorithms that could predict the Shadowborn dimensional shifts with uncanny accuracy. 3 of the enemy command vessels were destroyed outright, while 2 others were severely damaged. The effect on the Shadowborn fleet was immediate and dramatic. Without centralized coordination, the smaller units began attacking in uncoordinated waves that were much easier for the station's defenses to handle. But Elena felt a warning from Fenris through the network. They prepare a final gambit, something desperate and dangerous. "What are they doing?" Elena asked mentally. "They are opening a major dimensional breach, not to bring in reinforcements, but to destabilize this entire region of space. If they cannot conquer your station, they will destroy it and everything within several light years." Elena felt cold dread despite her enhanced emotional processing. The implications of such an attack went far beyond Meridian Prime. "Admiral," she called out urgently, "the Shadowborn are preparing to destabilize local space-time. We're talking about a dimensional collapse that could affect multiple star systems." Morrison's face went pale. "Can we stop it?" Elena consulted with Fenris and felt the ancient Guardians' uncertainty. The weapon they deploy is similar to devices used in the final battles of the Ancient War. We learned to counter them, but the techniques require perfect coordination across multiple Guardian units. How many Guardians?" Elena asked. "At minimum, 3. Ideally 5 or more." Elena reached out through the Guardian network, sensing the awakening consciousness of Fenris's siblings across the galaxy. Most were still emerging from stasis, confused and disoriented. But there were exceptions. "I can sense 2 other Guardians within response range," Elena announced. "Heimdall in the Perseus arm and Vidar near the galactic core. Both are combat-ready and able to provide support." Admiral Morrison looked at her with incomprehension. "Doctor, those Guardians are hundreds of light years away. How could they possibly provide support?" Elena smiled as her enhanced understanding of Guardian technology provided the answer. "They don't need to be physically present. Guardian consciousness can operate across quantum-linked networks instantaneously. With enhanced humans as relay nodes, we can coordinate a 3-Guardian defensive operation." The process required Elena's team to open their consciousness completely to the Guardian network, becoming conduits for ancient intelligences that have been fighting the Shadowborn for longer than human civilization had existed. Elena felt her awareness expand exponentially as Heimdall and Vidar's consciousness flowed through the network. For a moment, she was simultaneously Elena Vasquez, standing on Meridian Prime, and ancient Guardians positioned across the galaxy, seeing the universe from perspectives that no human had ever experienced. The coordinated Guardian response began just as the Shadowborn dimensional weapon reached critical activation. Elena felt herself becoming part of a collective consciousness that spanned multiple star systems, processing information and coordinating responses on a scale that defied human comprehension. "Now," Fenris commanded through the network, The three Guardians, working through their enhanced human interfaces, began weaving a counterpattern to the Shadowborn dimensional weapon. It wasn't a matter of destroying the device, but of redirecting its effects back on itself. Elena felt the strain of channeling such massive energies through her enhanced nervous system, but the modifications Fenris had made to her biology allowed her to survive processes that would have killed an unmodified human instantly. The space around Meridian Prime warped and twisted as dimensional forces beyond normal comprehension clashed. Reality itself seemed to ripple as the Shadowborn weapon met the Guardian countermeasures. For a moment, Elena thought they had failed. The dimensional distortions continued to expand, threatening to tear apart the local space-time structure. Then, suddenly, the effect reversed. The Shadowborn dimensional weapon imploded, creating a cascade failure that spread throughout their fleet. One by one, the enemy vessels were caught in dimensional vortices that pulled them out of normal space-time entirely. "My God," Admiral Morrison whispered, watching the tactical display as the entire Shadowborn fleet simply vanished. Where did they go? Elena, still connected to the Guardian network, could perceive the answer. Nowhere. They've been displaced to a pocket dimension where they'll remain until their energy sources are exhausted. Effectively, they're trapped. The victory was absolute, but Elena could sense that it was only the beginning. Through the Guardian network, she was receiving reports from across the galaxy as other Shadowborn forces responded to the defeat at Meridian Prime. "They will escalate," Fenris warned. "This victory proves that your species can be enhanced to fight them effectively. They will bring their full force to bear before you can enhance more of your people." Elena felt the truth of that assessment. The enhanced humans had proven that humanity could stand against the Shadowborn, but they were still vastly outnumbered. The enemy would not make the mistake of underestimating them again. "Admiral," Elena said, turning to Morrison, "we need to begin mass enhancement protocols immediately. What we've accomplished here proves it can be done, but we'll need thousands of enhanced humans to face what's coming next." Morrison nodded grimly. "Dr. Vasquez, I'm authorizing full-scale implementation of the enhancement program. How quickly can we begin?" Elena consulted with the Guardian network, feeling the collective consciousness of awakening Guardians across the galaxy. "With multiple Guardian facilities coming online, we can enhance volunteers at an exponential rate. But we need to start now." She looked at the enhanced human team, feeling their determination through the network connection. They had proven that humanity could fight the ancient enemy, but the real war was just beginning. "The Shadowborn have ruled the galaxy through fear for 50,000 years, Elena announced. Today, they learned that their reign of terror is ending. Humanity has found its place in the ancient war, and we will not be their victims." Through the viewports of Meridian Prime, Elena could see the space where the Shadowborn fleet had vanished. Empty now, but she knew it was temporary. More would come, in greater numbers and with new tactics. But humanity would be ready for them, enhanced, connected to the Guardian network, and armed with 50,000 years of accumulated tactical knowledge. For the first time since the ancient war began, the Shadowborn would face an enemy that could match their dimensional capabilities and exceed their resolve. Elena felt Fenris's satisfaction through the network, along with something she hadn't expected: hope. After millennia of sleeping Guardians and empty battlefields, the ancient war had new soldiers. And these soldiers would not accept defeat. The battle for Meridian Prime was over. The war for the galaxy's future had just begun.